Thank you, Rich.
Rich, you can hear it. I do this a lot.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to our special school committee here at the Mitchell at the Middle, Bridgewater Middle School Superintendent's Central Office here in November 10th. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we get started with tomorrow being Veterans Day, I want to acknowledge our very own Mr. Hammond and Mr. Marrera for their service to our country in the armed forces. They sit here behind me over my right shoulder this evening. So thank you both, gentlemen. And all of the veterans who work within the district or for the district, thank you for your service. We called this meeting last week as a result of the Thursday numbers and Raynham being read for the third week in a row. But given that the matrix has since changed, we're here to now discuss what that matrix change means to us as a district. We have Mr. Powers is on the line, as is Mr. Tanis, our health agent from Raynham, and Ms. Williams, our assistant town manager from the town of Bridgewater. So Mr. Swenson, I'll turn it over to you first before we hear from the towns.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan, members of the committee. As Mr. Dolan explained, last week when we were discussing having this meeting, we wanted to come together to discuss what it would mean to the district now that Raynham had finished the end of the week within their 2-week period within the red shaded area. As Mr. Dolan just stated, last week, Governor Baker came out with a new matrix that we're going to introduce tonight for those folks who may not have seen it. That breaks down the population of under 10,000 to 10,000 to 50,000 and over 50,000. Please note, however, all of these cases are still based upon the 100,000 person population for a town or city. So when we introduce these numbers tonight, Mr. Tanis will kind of walk us through that and what that means to us, because once this new matrix came out last week, Raynham then went into the green shaded section and Bridgewater into the yellow. So I know there's some questions and some confusions. We had our own today when we were meeting with the health agents, and it's a little bit difficult to wrap your head around, but I think it's important information that we put out to the community now before moving forward throughout the school year. With that being said, let's introduce Mr. Tanis if he is on.
Good evening.
Mr. Tanis, thank you for joining us tonight.
Sure, no problem. So as, sorry, go ahead.
I just wondered if you could kind of explain to the public what we discussed today during our weekly meeting with our health agents.
Certainly. So as you mentioned, and as I'm sure everybody's aware, Raynham was projected to have had its third weekend in the red. And then Friday, the state changed the metrics and the way that the gray, green, yellow, and red was calculated. This changed Raynham from being in the red to being in the green. So the change came basically as a the change will provide a more graduated process for communities, especially the smaller communities, the less than 10,000. The way the old metrics were calculated, just a couple positive cases in a small community would be thrown from green to red, which essentially could be one household, which really could cause a lot of trouble for businesses, schools. So this brings things more into a graduated process that is more in line also with what other states around us are doing for metrics. So the old calculation, or the old metrics were much more conservative. And again, this updated metrics brings everything more in line. Certainly we locally didn't have anything to do with this change. It was done at the state level. And we're just trying to wrap our heads around on how everything's going to be calculated now going forward. The actual number of cases did not change. It's just the way, or the scaling, if you will. So last week, based on that 2-week reporting, Raynham had 21 new positive cases, which is been relatively the same over the last, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks. We've had in the low to mid 20s as new cases for the 2-week reporting. This week, it seems like it will definitely be within that trend as well. So that the new metrics, the gray across, it'll be the same for Bridgewater and Raynham because our population is in that middle 10,000 to 5,000 category. So to be in the gray, it would have to be less than or equal to 10 total cases within that 2-week period, which certainly we're quite a ways from. The green, which we're in now, this is where it starts to get calculated with that population per 100,000. Raynham is right around that 15,000 mark. So to be in the green, it would have to be less than 10 average cases per 100,000 residents, and that's per day. So essentially it would be 1.5 cases per day over that 14-day period, and more than 10 total cases. Obviously 10 total cases would put us into the gray. Going into the yellow category, it'd have to be greater than or equal to the average of 10 cases per 100,000, or a greater than 5% positivity rate. And that positivity rate gets calculated basically all the new tests that are conducted over that 2-week period divided by the number of positive tests. So that number, in talking with DPH today, as far as the total number of tests, we don't locally really get notified of every time someone gets tested. We only get notified of positive tests. We can search by, a specific name to look up a name if they were tested and if they tested negative. But the total number of tests, we don't get notified. I know the state is trying to change that so we can have a better idea for our calculations, prior to Thursday, so we have an idea as to where the town is trending for that week's reporting. Hopefully that'll be straightened out in the next week or two. And then also, as far as going to red, it'd have to be greater than 10 cases per 100,000 and greater than 5% positivity rate. I would be very concerned if we went to the red, just based on the 5% or greater than 5% positivity rate. That is a substantial number of positive cases for those that are being tested. But as of right now, it looks like Raynham will be staying in the green. We're on the higher end of the green or the very low end of the yellow. So as far as the calculation for the average cases per 100,000, it's a pretty lengthy calculation. It basically, you take the number of cases that you had for that particular day. You have to do that every day for 14 days. You add it up, and there's a mathematical calculation that we can use. So as far as the cases, those are only new cases. If somebody were to have tested positive, say 3 weeks ago, they were to go get tested again, it might be to return to work or whatever the case may be. If they test positive again, that is not included. It only goes with the first positive test. So that's important to note. As far as the cutoff, again, I think this had been mentioned in a prior meeting. The 2 weeks is calendar week. So the cutoff for this week's weekly reporting was Saturday night. The state likes to have the few days, so they'll run their calculations based off whatever data they have for up through till tomorrow morning. I believe 8 a.m. is the cutoff. The reasoning for that is because of a lag between the labs, you getting tested, the lab being able to run the test, and then the reporting back to the state. So it encompasses more than what would just be if they were to cut that time off and then report it right away. So you get a little better representation. Other than that, as far as the map is concerned, we've been told this afternoon that that color-coded map will no longer be available, and instead the gray, green, yellow, and red will just be within that weekly reporting town by town, but there won't be a physical map like there has been in the past. With that, I'll be more than happy to entertain any questions.
Before we go to you, Mr. Tanis, for questions, I just want to ask Ms. Williams if she has an update for the town of Bridgewater, and then maybe we'll open it up to the both of you, if that's all right.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Tanis, that I did not have to explain this new reporting structure, but from the town of Bridgewater as of 4 p.m. today, we have 11 positive cases that we're reporting in the Maven system. 2 of those cases are in the same household. We expect one of the cases of the 11 to come off of the books tomorrow. What we do know is that none of the cases involve children, only adults, and we have completed all of our contract tracing on those individuals. And as Mr. Tanis kind of explained, this puts Bridgewater in the yellow, even under this new coding matrix. We expect to remain in the yellow today. With one coming off, we could be trending down to green. These cases that we have are not inclusive of the university that is in Bridgewater. Those cases are identified separately, and we have one positive case there and 9 individuals in quarantine.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you have anything?
Just to clarify, Mr. Tanis or Mrs. Williams, the numbers that you have, active numbers, do not count towards the daily numbers. Those daily numbers are new cases, not cases that are already on the books from the previous week, correct? So when we're talking about the different color shades of the matrix, we're talking about new cases per day, not carrying existing cases from the week prior.
So it's a 2-week worth of reporting. So it'd be new cases within that 2-week period. So I don't have a counter in front of me. I can tell you 1 second here. So this week's report will include, let's see, the week of October 25th to the 31st, and November 1st to November 7th is what it will include. There is a 1-week overlap week by week, and that's to give a more well-rounded average, if you will.
Okay.
Those are, what's reported is only new cases, correct?
So new cases per day during those timeframes.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Tanis or Ms. Williams?
I did
Yes,
have a question. How many weeks, Mr. Tanis, is it that a town has to be in the red in order for us to transition from hybrid into a full remote now. Is it still the same, the 3 weeks, or has that changed as well?
It's my understanding that in order to for a school to transition from a hybrid to a full remote, there's no set trigger as far as if we go to red for 3 weeks. That decision needs to be made as a collaborative effort between myself, certainly it would be Bridgewater since it's a district school, the school staff, any of the stakeholders, mainly because it's not just specific to a color on a map and number of cases. Certainly, if we had an outbreak, say at one of the nursing homes, that would throw us into red, even though nothing was related to the schools. And so the state basically doesn't want, oh, third week is red, schools shut down, that's it. That is not part of the metrics. So I think it's just discussion that would have to happen. Certainly if I were to see school transmission, that would be a huge red flag, and certainly would be having those discussions way before I think we even went into the third week of red. On my end, on the school's end, there's readiness that would have to be evaluated as far as, does the school have enough supplies to ensure the safety of the kids as far as disinfectant and hand sanitizer, and also staff, does the school have enough staff to continue the hybrid, or are so many staff out on quarantine or isolation that it's just extremely difficult to continue the hybrid model. I think there's just a lot of discussion that would have to happen in order to transition to a full remote. It's not just as simple as a third week of red. Certainly had the metrics not changed, Raynham would have gone to red for a third week in a row. That would have basically meant that Raynham would have transitioned from the reopening schedule of phase 3, step 2, and we would have reverted back to phase 3, step 1, which is essentially what we were in all summer and most of September. But with that, it was advised that the health department sit and have discussion with school administration and really see, where these cases are. We've been having quite a bit of household transmission. A lot of times it's completely unavoidable, but that's not related to the school. I mean, as we speak now, I have not seen any transmission on the Raynham side within the school setting. Certainly sports have played a factor, outside sports leagues, clubs, things like that. I've had some cases, and certainly a lot of folks on quarantine as a result of the sports, also some parties, and certainly just community transmission is always there as well. But I have not seen any transmission within the school setting. I think that's very important to note at this time. Certainly should that change and we see, again, transmission within the school setting, that would be a huge red flag, and I think immediate discussion would be transpiring between myself, hopefully Bridgewater, and the school administration, if not the school committee.
I think it's, Mrs. Holbrook, I think it's important to know, we would be looking for the information behind the numbers, not just the numbers themselves. Even this week, if we didn't have a different matrix and we were coming in this evening to talk about the numbers in Raynham, I would not be sitting here advocating to go fully remote, because I know the numbers and what they indicate for the community of Raynham and Bridgewater. We meet with the Department of Health every Tuesday. We go through the numbers, and a lot of these numbers are clustered within families. It's not a widespread throughout our community, and it's definitely, as Mr. Tanis just stated, there's to this point, knock on wood, there has been no transmissions within the school setting. So at that point, my view would be that schools are actually safer when kids are here than if we were to go fully remote and now they're out in the community where they had probably more of a chance, where there is not the 4 to 6 feet of social distancing, wearing of masks all the time, the hand sanitizing, the washing of hands, everything, all those mitigation practices we're putting in place are preventing this transmission. My concern would be if we went fully remote based upon the numbers just of the town, putting those students into the community could be a larger risk than keeping them here. So those are the conversations that we have every Tuesday. Those are the types of things that we want to continue to have based upon these new matrix as well.
Perfect, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Tanis, we've received questions from parents requesting that we return fully into in person. And I'm gonna put you on the spot, if I could.
That's fine.
And ask from the Board of Health standpoint, do you feel like we should be making a move at this point to change what we're doing now?
From a public health standpoint, I would say no, for multiple reasons. One, numbers are increasing as far as positive cases, in the country and whatnot, setting new records almost every day, it seems like, which is very alarming. And although they may not be from the school setting as we speak right now, changing the way the transition from, say, a hybrid model to all the students back in 5 days a week. I know in speaking with, on our Tuesday meetings and with administration, this would mean that all spaces within the school will be used for classroom space. The separation will change from the 4 to 6 feet down to the 3 foot separation. Certainly what the school is doing right now is working to keep transmission down or not existent within the school setting. Everything that from a local health department to the state to the CDC, what we've been telling everybody, the public, for months and months now, is maintain social distancing of 6 feet or more. And I feel that it may send the wrong message, especially to kids. Oh, it's okay to be 3 feet apart in school, but now I have to be 6 feet apart. It's very confusing. That being said, I'm concerned with that 3 foot separation within the school setting as far as transmission. Also, the number of people, should a student test positive, you're going to have double the number of close contacts. That and just utilizing all of the space, and again, this would have to go back to administration and working things out, but you'd be using cafeterias, the library, technology rooms, the gyms. Where are the kids going to eat their lunch? Where are they going to take mask breaks? We're heading into the colder weather now. As far as mask breaks and going outside, that may be hindered. You're not going to be able to have windows open to provide extra ventilation, and you're just doubling the number of students in general into a school setting. So you're doubling the chances or more of risk of infection within the school, and then an easier spread within the school setting as well, just with a closer distance. And that continues on even to, an issue with busing and things like that. So I think at this point, I would recommend staying with a hybrid model. It certainly seems to be working in keeping transmission down within the schools and still being able to utilize it. I was in the elementary school a couple weeks ago, still being able to utilize space for lunch and things like that. That's not in the classroom at the desk. As far as maybe a slight change to the hybrid model, I know some schools, and we had talked about this earlier, are slightly changing and the way the cohorts are in person and utilizing the Wednesday within every other week. As long as facilities doesn't need that full day to do their cleaning, and the cleaning can still be conducted properly throughout the evening and night. I think that would certainly be a reasonable request or a reasonable practice to put into place. But as far as putting all the kids back in school full-time at this point, with cases on the rise within the community, the state, and the country, I think it's just a poor decision. That being said, I think that's a decision that certainly should be evaluated on a regular basis going forward. Should treatments for COVID prove to be effective and widely available, a vaccine availability, certainly with whatever transpires with new cases, anything could change almost overnight. So I think that just a regular evaluation of where the communities, Bridgewater and Raynham, as well as the state and the country are in, I think that's very important. But at this point, I would urge to stay within some form of a hybrid model.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I do want to ask Mr. Swenson for clarification on 2 points Mr. Tanis made, but if there are any other questions? Could you speak to Mr. Tanis's points about using the gym, cafeterias, and then what that potential Wednesday would look like? Or
If we were to utilize that Wednesday.
right, if you were to Mr. Tanis's point, if you were to utilize that Wednesday, what potentially could?
First start with the communal space. When we
Yeah.
did our space assessment with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education this summer, we realized that we could not, because they asked us to do all 3 scenarios: a full return, a hybrid, and a fully remote. When we did the space assessment, we realized that we could not safely get all of our kids back in at that 6-foot mark. We couldn't get it at the 5, we couldn't get it at the 4. We would be able to get the students back in at the 3-foot mark, which Desi stated we could utilize. However, it would mean that some classes would need to utilize communal spaces such as libraries, cafeteria, gymnasiums, tech suites, only because the square footage in some of our classrooms would not be able to accommodate, say, a group or a cohort of students of 25. So that teacher would then have to go move into a larger communal space that could accommodate that group at the 3-foot spacing. So that's why we're stating, and that was part of our survey that we sent out this week, was that would you be willing to come back if it meant your child might need to be in a non-traditional setting, such as that communal space I just mentioned. That means we would probably have a lack of technology in those areas, a lack of resources in terms of interactive whiteboards and the rest that you would have in a traditional classroom. It may also mean that some of those spaces may have multiple classes within it. I believe here at the Mitchell, Mr. Bray stated at one point, it might be up to 3 classrooms that would have to be in that cafeteria area in order to make this work at the 3-foot mark here at the Mitchell. So those are things that we have to weigh as far as, yes, we all want our students back. I think we're all on the same page there. We know that we need to be smart and reasonable and safe about it. We realize that regardless of what the state says about them wanting students back, they're still going to require a minimum of 3 feet for the social distancing. So another piece to that we have to think about is busing. And I did talk to someone at the state level today about busing. And what's difficult for us within a regional school district is we do not have the option to state that a certain population of student will not be utilizing our transportation. I know that Mr. Florence mentioned a district that they were not, I believe from grade 6 and up, were no longer going to be transporting students to school. We don't have that luxury because we actually get state funding through Chapter 71, which requires us to bus all of our students that are eligible for transportation 1.5 miles away from the sites in which they attend. So social distancing on our buses would be an issue because they're not taking away that mandate. So those are all the things that we need to take into consideration. And I do agree with Mr. Tanis. It's a situation where the mitigation practices that were currently in place are what are helping us minimize, or right now, not even have any transmission rates within our schools, being 4 to 6 feet away, wearing the masks, not utilizing communal space and allowing our students to go there for mask breaks or to eat their lunch, because you're still gonna need to be 6 feet away when we eat without a mask. Now, we're gonna have to find communal space during the school day for those students that are now fully re-entered into our buildings. So a cohort of 25 students now needs to find a space to go eat lunch 6 feet apart without masks. That's still gonna be a requirement. You're not gonna be able to do that within the 3-foot mark. So those are all things that internally we have been discussing, and we do understand the sense of urgency for some parents to want to get students back in. We have that sense of urgency as well. We just need to let the community know that there are still parameters that are set that we need to navigate. And this is not going to be an easy situation if we were to decide to allow students to come back here. There would be a lot of planning that goes into that piece, and a lot of transitioning of classrooms and furniture and different things that would need to take place before that, was able to do so safely.
Any other questions? Yeah.
You didn't speak to the Wednesday. That
Oh,
you were
right.
gonna-
Oh,
I did say that, didn't I?
So the way the Wednesday model currently is, there would be some things that we would need to work out with some of our collective bargaining units, because the way the Wednesday is currently structured is that it's a 2.5 hours of remote learning, except for our cohort C students that are in during that time, where they receive 2.5 hours of live instruction. And then it's a half day of planning for our teachers for remote learning. Now, we may have to look at that situation and see if we could work something out where that could be a full day, but it may only be able to be utilized as a half-day situation, similar to what our cohort C students have right now, of 2.5 hours of live instruction, and then they are sent home for the day, and then the teachers have planning in the afternoon. So we could explore that. That's totally not off the table. Those are things that, all kinds of discussions we're currently having, and throwing things against the wall and see what sticks. But we could definitely look at that, explore that on a rotating basis, whereas 1 week cohort A would come in Monday, Tuesday, that Wednesday, and the following week would be cohort B, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So those are the things that we can definitely explore. It's just, I don't know at this stage that we could promise it would be a full day of instruction for students in person.
Yeah, Susan.
Mr. Swenson, on the Wednesdays, are the teachers required to remain in the building for that half-day Wednesday?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? Mr. Tanis, thank you. Ms. Williams, thank you.
Dennis, Mrs. Williams.
Appreciate it. And we'll move to public comment on the agenda. Please raise your hand, and we will invite you to unmute yourself. I apologize for tripping on my words. And we will take it from there. Again, the school committee welcomes information, concerns, and opinions from those attending the meeting in order to give those wishing to comment a fair opportunity to speak, and ensure we don't violate the open meeting law and other legal obligations. And to avoid disruption during the meeting, the committee will not engage with the speaker or with one another and deliberations on comments made here tonight. At our discretion, the committee may schedule issues to be raised by a speaker tonight for a future meeting. We would just ask you to provide your name and the town you live in, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak? Please raise your hand. Going once. Going twice. And if you could scroll up just one more time, Judy. Yep, where you have one. Okay. We have Ms. Fisher.
Hi, I'm Erin Fisher, a parent, 3 kids. I also teach in the town next door of East Bridgewater. And I'd just like to make for public comment that in the town I work in, we are phasing children back in. We started phasing children back in 2 weeks ago. We are filling the desks at the 6 feet level first, and then we are exploring minimizing the distance between children. We have noted some of the districts that have been in full, and like you mentioned, the lack of in-school spread. We have not had in-school spread. And I would just like to point out that this is something that is being done in a town right next door.
Thank you. Anyone else?
If they raise their hand, they
I was going to say, I think they go to the top, don't they?
Yep,
Yeah.
they
Okay,
should.
all right, yeah, okay. Ms. Jackson. Nope, she lowered her hand.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, my name is Amy Jackson. I live in Bridgewater. I have 3 children in the district. My youngest I sent out of district because it just wasn't going to work for in-person kindergarten. I'm also a teacher in a South Shore town, have been for over 20 years. And I think it really needs to be explored to have students return to in-person instruction as most as possible for all types of students at all levels. It is imperative for social and emotional and everything else that has already been stated. I also think it is a step in the right direction to explore more in-person time on Wednesday. And I would caution you to not make a focus of lack of technology. These students are in front of screens all the time. They would benefit greatly from a lack of technology and to explore more discovery of learning without the technology present. So I would just encourage you to continue the conversation and really have an action plan in place to get these kids back to school. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no one else, we will close public comment.
I am raising my hand, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Wendy.
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Wendy Van Egmond, and I'm a parent in Raynham at RMS under Liberty and president of the PTO. And I just wanted to ask the question about option that was discussed previously by switching in January between hybrid and fully remote. What is the status about that? Is there a certain time that there will be communication about?
So Wendy, that's a good question.
Oh, it's a question. Yeah, I understand. So yeah, so that's what I want to find out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
I would encourage you to reach out to Mr. Powers to have that
Okay.
question answered.
Yep, I will do that. Thank you.
All right, I think that's everyone. Nope, there's one more.
That's Nick.
Is it Nick?
It's actually Shannon Nicholas. Hi guys, how are you? I have 3 children in the school system currently. One of them is on a 504 plan and one of them is on an IEP. What I'm finding, and maybe I missed it because I jumped on a little late, what I'm finding is missing from a lot of the conversations are the children that have accommodations and IEPs where those are things that can't be met at home. So on my daughter's IEP, she has, 3 times 15 for instructional schedule. She's got small group, and she has, some other things. And for her services are simply not being met as the majority of her time is spent out of the classroom. Now, I understand that, there's the cohort C, and those are the sub-separate kids, which she is not. However, I feel that there is a lack of focus on the kids who have services but don't meet those parameters. I don't hear it discussed very often, and I've been a part of a lot of these Zoom meetings. What are the considerations for those children?
Thank you. I would, specifically to your own children, I would reach out to Mr. Jovelos, our Director of Student Services, to speak directly to your own child's situation. See no one else, so we will move along. And actually, the last thing on the agenda is a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before we adjourn, if I could just ask a question to kind of come back a little bit to one of the earlier questions about trying to get students back into school. As I look at the different communities and hear all the different things going on, is there a way to slowly start reintegrating some students without, almost like a trial run, without going all in with the whole school district? And maybe, the IEP students, originally I was under the impression that all IEP students were in the cohort C. And I came to find out that's not, how it's working. So maybe as a trial run is maybe getting all of our IEP students that need the extra services into cohort C. I know that'll increase the classroom size a little bit, and it could be a good gauge to see if it's going to work or not, without actually saying, oh, we're going to bring just grade 1 in, or grade 2 in, or grade 3 in. Let's bring all the IEP in as our test run, as long as it's not going to implode the process where there's so many IEPs that's not going to fit. And we're still not able, we're not able to use the 6-foot eating spacing and stuff like that. Is that even a possibility by looking at the numbers per grade? If we can roll all the IEP students into cohort C, that would increase the classroom size per day and start to maybe, almost like a trial run. We could get a good idea if even a larger future rollout of more students in the classroom would even work.
So we discussed this with our admin team last week. I have asked them to run all of the numbers of what it would be to return all of our inclusion IEP students. Someone made the point, if we're going to do that, shouldn't we be looking to do that for our ESL level 4 and 5 students as well? Because we want to make sure we have equity in regards to that. So we are running those numbers right now. I asked them to have those numbers to me by Friday, this coming Friday, the 13th. We'll look at that and we'll look at what that means in terms of social distancing within those classrooms. What does that mean for the dynamic of the overall school? Meaning if we can't necessarily get all those kids back in through a cohort C4 model, which we would probably look at those kids coming in maybe like a Monday, Tuesday, not being there maybe on the Wednesday, and maybe being there on the Thursday and Friday. What does that mean in terms of, does that impact the school to the point where we have to move into communal space? So that's a great point. Mr. Marrero is this kind of our trial run to see if we can do, and to hear the last parent state that, her children who are on IEPs and a 504 may be struggling a little bit and need that extra support. We're going to look at that. Can't promise it right now because it may be so impactful that we're not able to do it at the current 4-foot mark. So we have to do it based upon everything we have in play now, which is the distancing of 4 to 6 feet. What that means is in terms of numbers of those students coming back to the individual inclusion sections at an individual school. And if we can't do it within those traditional classrooms, do we have to move into communal space? And what is the overall impact on that site? So those are things we are currently exploring. We'll have those numbers as of Friday.
That would be amazing. I know, and I put a lot of, I thought into it and thinking about it. I'm like, well, if we bring back just grade 1, then grades 2 through 12 are going to say, well, why not us?
You're going to have an equity issue. You're going to have,
right. So at least if we can say, well, IEP students or, the other students, they're kind of, sprinkled around all the grades across the whole grade system. So at least now, we're not saying we're just doing it for grade 1. We're just doing it for grade 2. We're taking a little sampling of all the grades and bringing it back, increasing the classroom sizes a little bit more, but still offer the option if those parents don't feel comfortable to stay on a hybrid level, because we'll still have the cohort A and C in place.
Right.
So parent, it's not, automatic, like you're an IEP, you're coming back. If parents still doesn't feel comfortable, then still stay in a hybrid model. But if those parents that their child needs the extra resources, the extra help, the extra attention, I'd say using those students as a kind of a trial run to slowly start introducing some more students into the system, and then once we cross that bridge after a month or so, like, hey, it seems to be working a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe the state by then will be adjusting their guidelines a little bit that we, can have more students in the building. Or instead of eating lunch at 6 feet, could be 5 feet, as time goes on, as we've noticed, this is evolving, and it evolves from not month to month or week to week, but from each day to each day. So,
like I said, we are exploring that piece. What I would say too is, because I know I hear some people saying, in districts that they work in or neighboring districts, it's not comparing apples to apples. People have to remember, we are in a district that we are down a site that used to house 1,000 students. So we were already in a space crunch prior to this. So to say, well, a neighboring district is moving in this direction, they don't have all of the different challenges and obstacles that we do. And that's just not a Bridgewater side situation, because that Bridgewater situation impacted Raynham schools. We have 8 sections of preschool that got moved to the Raynham Middle School. That's 8 classrooms that we could possibly explore, maybe transitioning kids back in. So I would just caution people when they start to compare district to district. Every district has its different dynamics, its different obstacles, its different challenges. Ours is space. And a space situation in a pandemic is a huge situation, because what are you trying to do? Space kids out. When you have limited space, because you're already down a huge site, that's what's creating a lot of our issues. So we're all about trying to get these kids back in, trying to get them in safely, but we have to do them within what the perimeters are set for us, whether that be our 4 to 6 feet that we currently have. If the committee were to decide to go down to 3 and explore that, whatever it may be, bringing back our special needs students that are inclusion settings. But it all comes down to, do we have the space in order to do it safely? And that's our challenge here in the district, and has been pre-COVID, so we were talking about space issues well before the pandemic hit. So I just want, folks out there who say, well, we're doing it in our district, you should be doing it here. There are other districts that don't have sites that aren't online. If this was, March of 22, and we had our building down on South Street up and running, we'd be in a lot better shape to explore these different type of scenarios. So we are going to get those numbers this Friday, Mr. Marrera. We will look at them. We'll see if this is a possibility. We do have to still work with our department of, our local health agents who are telling us right now the numbers are on the rise. We're going to be careful about limiting social distancing, including more people into our buildings, especially on the coattails of holidays, where you're going to have people who are going to be traveling, maybe traveling to red states, which are, our high-risk districts, coming back in, and we may see another spike, similar to what we're seeing right now. So we're all about getting these kids in. We just want to make sure that we're doing it in a safe and reasonable way.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Holbrook. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Marrero. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. We are opposed. We are opposed. We are adjourned, folks. Thank you very much. Have a good night.